Athens Town Hall meeting. Won't you be my neighbor? Housing and recovery for people in need. And so we're going to have three sections to this. First of all, we'll have some presentations on the challenge, and then we'll have some presentations on local solutions, and then we will open the floor to those of you who are here for your comments. And I'll say just a bit more about that when we get to it. And one thing I want to say is we've gathered because there's a challenge in our community, and we're here to see whether together we can help work toward a resolution. And the other side of that is that I will be mighty unhappy if I hear any expressions of pleasure or displeasure with what's said. That's not why we're here. And if you pardon one flippant little comment, given my view of the world, if you'd like to feel good, I would suggest go home, turn on your 1,000 channels, keep going till you find one that makes you feel good and sit there and enjoy it. We're here to wrestle with a challenge, and so I hope you will do that. And probably the wisest thing we can all do is to think, let me this evening try to listen thoughtfully to every expression, especially those that are perhaps farthest from my own view. That's one thing that we can do for each other in this community, to try to ponder the broad range of viewpoints. And so, first of all, we have 4 presentations which we're entitled Challenges. And the first one is going to be from Terry Russell of NAMI, Ohio, and he has a designation of 20 minutes. And so, with that, Terry, here you are.
Thank you. I'm not going to be 20 minutes. That'll make everybody happy. You can't share about that. I really appreciate the opportunity to come down to Athens. I retired after a number of years, 6 years ago, and I moved down here to Athens County and built a little log cabin, and my wife and I really enjoyed it. They asked me to come back to Columbus to work again, so I went back to work, and now I'm living back in Columbus, but it's always good to be here. I have really fond memories. The other thing is some of the people that I care about more than anything are here, people that I work with who are family members, and I just want to, they know who they are, how special they are to me. Mine's about stigma tonight, my presentation. There is no disgrace in having a mental illness. It's no one's fault. It's not a reflection of integrity or character. No one is immune. 1 in 5 families will experience someone with a mental illness, and over 360,000 citizens of Ohio have a mental illness. Mental illnesses are brain disorders. They are illnesses like all others. Treatment exists and people do recover. What is most important is to avoid pretending that these illnesses do not exist, to try to cover it up as if it were a terrible secret. What is important is to reach out openly to others for support and understanding. Tonight, I am talking to the citizens of Athens County, asking you to offer a helping hand to people that need you. In 1959, that's a long time ago, I was a 13-year-old boy living in Columbus, Ohio, and I had a brother who was 15 years older than me. I've never forgot getting off the school bus, from junior high school bus, in the paddy wagon, the police car, taking my brother out of the home and taking him up to the state hospital up on the west side of Columbus. And as mean as the kids were, and the kids were pretty mean on the bus, the thing that really I will remember the rest of my life is walking into the bedroom and seeing my mother, who was distraught. And what she said to me is, what will the neighbors think? What will the people at the church think? Stigma in 1959. I wish I could have said to her, what they should think is my brother was going for help. No different than going to a hospital and getting help because of a heart attack or some other illness of an organ. The brain is the most complicated organ, but we cannot overcome the stigma for this illness. Tonight, I hope you will listen to some of the things I say, and maybe you'll understand that it's stigma. It's not truth, it's stigma. My brother was never mean or abusive. If anything, he was abused. He was a good neighbor and helped anyone he could, almost to a fault. Sadly, his mother, my mother, a very, very good person, was ashamed of him. Ashamed of him. How sad. Helen Keller, a woman who overcame overwhelming social stigma, said, and one quote from Helen Keller, I think this is so important: the highest result of education is tolerance. The public is bombarded by falsehoods and sensationalism. Sometimes the media plays a complicit role in housing issues when they choose to sensationalize isolated incidents, fueling fear and misconception. What is almost never publicized is the fact that the majority of those in recovery from mental health rejoin their community with great success. They are good relationships with their neighbors. They live productive lives and positively contribute to the community. In 1997, as a mental health director back then, Earl Cecil's colleague, I purchased a home for $199,000 in Yellow Springs, Ohio. How many know about Yellow Springs, Ohio? Now, I'm going to tell you what, it makes Athens look like a conservative mecca. This home was a home for 16 individuals who once lived in our state hospitals. I will never forget the town hall meeting and the concerns raised by the neighbors. By the grace of God, we were able to answer those questions and make the home an asset to the Yellow Springs community. After 15 years, those living in that home volunteer at the library, are often seen in their garden, sitting on the porch. Almost all the neighbors know the residents by name and have felt an enrichment in their lives because they have seen these individuals live productive lives in this home that was made available to them. I often think that if I wouldn't have been able to purchase this facility, or the neighbors yelled, "Not in my neighborhood," where would these special people go? I am certain that their recovery and their joy that they have been able to feel in this home would have never been realized, and some would have died. It is important for all of us to know that of those individuals in this state with a severe mental illness, very, very, very few are violent and commit crimes. In fact, they are 6 times more likely to be a victim of crime than to commit a crime. That is not to say that a person with a mental illness always does the right thing. They are no different than me and you. In 1959, my mother was worried about what the people would think because of the stigma surrounding the illness. 53 years later, we have minute-to-minute communication. We hear about things that were once only known in a very small geographic area. Horrible crimes are almost always reflected on the mental illness of the predator. Is it fair to the 99.9% of the citizens with mental illness to even be associated with individuals who may or may not be mentally ill, but certainly have done something criminal? The association is unfair. Again, remember my brother. He was never, never harmful to anybody. Again, the purpose of having specialized housing is a tool to allow people to recover and go on with their lives and not be ashamed or be threatened by anyone because they suffer from a mental illness. I have been blessed that I began my career 40 years ago this week. 40 years. I'm going to get emotional. In fact, my whole life has been directly impacted with mental health because of my brother's illness, led me into the field. And I have met some of the most incredible individuals anyone could befriend, all of them with mental illnesses. As God put his hand on my shoulder through my involvement with my brother and the career that I have enjoyed, I am asking all of you tonight to open up your hearts and minds, reject the stigma, and become advocates on behalf of those in the community needing a helping hand. One of my all-time favorite projects is the Ridges Cemetery project here in Athens. A few people from this community were appalled at the way the cemetery had been abandoned and the total disrespect of those buried there who once were in the state hospital due to their mental illness. Today, not only do those individuals and their families have the respect restored, but it may be the most tranquil, hollow grounds to walk on anywhere in the state. If a few people in Athens can complete this monumental task, I know the citizens of this community can throw away the stigma and help the living have appropriate housing and dignity and life they deserve. I told you, I have been blessed to be here. I'm blessed to be in the mental health field. But I'm saddened after 4 years that we still have to fight stigma, fight a system that's grossly underfunded, and fight for our lives when all we have is an illness. Thank you for hearing from me tonight. Thank you.
Let's turn now to our next speaker, Andrea Horsch, Director of Caregiving at Good Works. Andrea? If they could hear me then, I'll hear you now.
Thank you. Well, I'm the Director of Caregiving at Good Works. I've worked inside our Home for People Without Homes, the Timothy House, for the last 7 years, and I've directed caregiving there for 6.5. I'm here primarily to talk about nuts and bolts kinds of problems. Not so much philosophy, but day-to-day reality. So every year we house between 150 and 200 people at the Timothy House. Providing shelter to people without homes is part of what Good Works does, and I want to tell you that we love our jobs. The people who are coming to us are suffering from broken relationships. They are people who have been poor for a long time, for the most part. Not all of them, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, there are people who have been poor for a long time who are coming from families that are also poor. Over half of our residents have some kind of disability, so many of those are mental illnesses or developmental disabilities, but many of them are also some kind of disabling physical impairment. They're also facing the challenge of long waiting lists for housing and a true lack of affordable housing in Athens. They also face many health issues as well as unemployment and underemployment issues. As many of you know, last year we were only able to meet a little bit over half of the need that we saw for emergency shelter. We housed 156 people and we turned away 142. And again, as many of you know, about 60 of those people were children who we turned away. Inside the Timothy House, part of the issue that we face is that the layout of our house is 4 bedrooms that are all upstairs. And so a problem that this creates is that depending on the structure of a family, there are very few ways for us to actually move in a family and create any kind of private space for them. There's also a big problem that we see with parents of kids exposing their kids to living with whoever else is living in the Timothy House at that time. Codes and zoning have prevented us from following through with our first choice, which we presented 5 years ago now, which was to purchase the house next door to the Timothy House and to expand into it, to connect the 2 houses, and to create a separate space for families. We are coded as a boarding house, which is the same as basically being coded as student housing, because there's no code for what we actually are, which is an agency that provides emergency housing. And so this is something that we're working on. You know, we're coded as a boarding house, but we're not a boarding house. Another challenge that we have discovered that kind of came out of what we were hoping to accomplish a few years ago is some legitimate concerns from people in the neighborhood, and also some sort of kind of general fearfulness. And so it's my hope to address a few of those concerns just a little bit. So some of our safety protocols that are in place at the Timothy House to protect both our residents who are already living there, our staff, and the neighborhood that we're in are, first and foremost, we want to hear your concerns. If you live near the Timothy House and you've had something happen in the neighborhood that was worrisome to you, or something that aroused your suspicions in some way, we would really like to talk with you about that and to hear from you about that. I also feel a need to explain that anyone who wants to live at the Timothy House is required to call us first and be screened on the phone. We're not the right place for everyone. So there are people who we talk to where we say, you're having a real emergency, and we're going to tell you to go to the emergency room and not to come here. There are other people that we speak to where we say, you're fleeing from an abuser, and there's a domestic violence shelter in town. Let us give you the number for that place. So we don't say yes to everyone. We want to guard our neighborhood, and we want to protect the people who are already living in the house. The Timothy House has strict rules, and we have a strict at the Timothy House or out of the neighborhood policy because we don't want people to just loiter in the Central Avenue neighborhood. We want the house to be safe, clean, and stable. We make many mental health referrals, and when we discover drug use, we evict the people who are using at the house. And when we evict someone after dark, we involve the police. We call the police and we ask them to drive through the neighborhood and make sure that everything is okay. We don't hesitate to involve the police when it's needed, and we cooperate with police investigations, though these have been rare. I also need to explain that it is not legal for us to house sex offenders at GoodWorks, and it has not been legal for about 6 years. And also, just a point of clarity, we are required to keep our building up to fire code. We desire to expand or to move, but not just any place will work. We want to make sure that whatever we do will be sustainable. And so we don't want to just purchase a second property somewhere else in town and have 2 sites for housing people on an emergency basis. That would double our staffing costs, and that would make it a much less sustainable venture. So we very much are interested in doing whatever we do well. And while we're currently the only shelter for people without homes, for men, women, and children without homes in 9 counties, we don't by any means want things to stay that way. And in fact, we've been doing some consulting with people in Hocking and Jackson counties about local people in those counties opening shelters for people from those counties. However, funding is a huge challenge for them. We also find that transportation is a huge issue for our residents. It's not only a reason that people become homeless, but it continues to be a challenge for them once they move into the Timothy House. And I will speak a little more about that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Your timing was magnificent. There's nothing like that to sort of set the standard. That's the community standard here, and you get an A++ today.
All right. Thank you, Ellsworth.
Showing us that you cut it right off without it's taking an extra 10 seconds, so thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Kenneth Ohlers, Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity.
Thank you. I really want to thank the individuals who put on this town hall meeting. I think this is great, and it's nice to see so many people out here in the community. I'm going to speak a little bit about what Habitat does in the community and what the needs of the community are in housing. And really, Habitat's about a simple, basic need. Needs change from time to time as we grow older. When I was in 8th grade, in my economics class, we had a challenge about needs versus wants. And Back then, needs were my saxophone and the baseball hat and things like that. And growing up in a community that's that I would say would be privileged community where I grew up, you don't really see the need for housing. And the simple basic needs that I'm talking about didn't hit home for me until I became a resident of Athens. And I came down to OU like many college students, wanting to come down for an education, and got a lot more out of it personally than that. Once I got here, I was able to see the problems in the community. I didn't think that it was that bad. I mainly stayed in Athens. People seemed to be happy, and it seemed like the situation was under control. But as I became more involved in the community, it became apparent that there was especially a need for affordable, decent shelter. Housing is a need that affects all of us. In Athens, affordable shelter is most certainly a need. We don't see substandard housing in Athens so much as we do affordability. The rental market here in Athens has really hindered the ability for low-income families to provide simple, decent, affordable housing for themselves. Low-income families deserve the same services that we enjoy, like public transportation, and also access to parks and things like that. Housing, like I said, is a need that affects all of us. Habitat is founded on the principle that everyone, everywhere, deserves a simple, decent, affordable home in which to live. And Habitat changes lives for residents. Locally, we've built 28 houses. We're currently finishing up our 28th. Internationally, Habitat has built over 500,000 homes. And we're planning on building an additional 100,000 this year internationally. Organizations like Habitat provide services for individuals who cannot be serviced by private industries and businesses. For instance, Habitat provides zero-interest mortgages to residents who qualify. Our qualifications are 30 to 60% of the area median income. Where would our community be without nonprofits? You should really think about that. Where would we be? Our organization would not be successful if it were not for the partnerships with local business owners and government entities that have allowed us to, and have allowed us to be successful, given us the tools that we need to help residents and change lives. We also value the hard work of volunteers and individuals who contribute to our cause. It's widely known in the Habitat world that Habitat is one of the few things that Rush Limbaugh and Jimmy Carter would both agree on. So. As with most organizations in very active communities, Habitat sometimes has to deal with issues and stigmas. What I have found is that most of these issues stem from a misunderstanding of the mission statement and services of the organization. For instance, one of the biggest complaints that Habitat receives when coming into a community is that we give houses away. This is simply not true. First of all, Habitat homeowners have to contribute 250 hours of sweat equity towards the building of their own home. In addition to that, once the house is built, they have to pay a mortgage over 25 years to cover what the cost of that house is. In addition to that, Habitat families pay property taxes and contribute to the insurance industry by paying insurance premiums. To date, Athens County Habitat homeowners have contributed over $346,000 in property tax revenue to the county. In addition to that, Habitat for Humanity families have a less than 1% foreclosure rate nationally. And I challenge any bank around here to come up with a foreclosure rate like that. Our Habitat family homeowners take care of their homes, and they respect the fact that they've been given an opportunity for a second chance. In closing, I'd like to emphasize that housing is not a political issue. It is a humanitarian one. People are in need, and they deserve a chance to create a better life for themselves. Opportunities to better our community will only come from partnerships with people in the community. We have a great city with great leadership, and by working together, we can continue to keep Athens great. Thank you very much. Glenn
hand
didn't
it
get a
to you.
seat at the table.
Thank you very much. I'll stand up. That's okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Glenn Crippen. I work with Hocking Athens Ferry Community Action. Our main office is located out in Gloucester in northern Athens County. And the reason I'm here today is to discuss fair housing. Ken has spoken about decent and affordable housing, and Andrea spoke about safe housing. I'm here to speak briefly about fair housing. Who has heard of fair housing? I'm curious. Okay, about half of the group. Very well. Our job is to, or our mission is to perform outreach in the community and education to communities about fair housing. A lot of people don't know what it is, and it's my guess that in Athens, even though we have a pretty educated group here, it's still an aspect of the housing industry that not too many people are aware about. And it deals with discrimination. Okay, fair housing is a federal law. It's a state law, and it's a law in the city of Athens as well. And there are protected classes under the fair housing law that prevent discrimination in the community. Under the federal law cites 6 protected classes of fair housing. And those are sex, military status. Military status is an Ohio law. I'll talk about that in a minute. So on the federal level, it's gender, national origin, physical or mental disability, familial status, race or color, and ancestry. And if we go to the state of Ohio, they passed a law to have one more protected class, and that is military status. And if we take it down a next level to city government here in the city of Athens, there's one additional protected class, which I've recently learned about, and that is the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender group of folks. So on the federal level, those 6, Ohio there's 7, and in Athens here there are 8. So a lot of folks don't know about it. We try to perform as much outreach as we can. We offer some services as well. The agency offers services that are vital to the community to help folks straighten out some issues they have with housing as it pertains to fair housing. First off, we provide a 1-800 number to everyone to call us. If anyone suspects that they're being discriminated against, they contact our agency, and we speak with them about what's going on, what the situation contains, and what the facts are about what's going on, what's the landlord doing, perhaps. And many times we learn that instead of it being a fair housing issue, it's a landlord-tenant issue. For instance, if someone's late on their lease, it's not, and they're getting evicted, and they're claiming that they're being discriminated against, we help them straighten that out and define or identify whether or not it's a fair housing complaint or really a landlord-tenant issue, which is a legal issue. So we help folks straighten that out. If we suspect that there could be true discrimination occurring, even the slightest bit, we consult with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission to find out if there is a case. And if there is a case, we consult with them, we refer to them, and we link those people up with those services necessary, because a lot of folks do not know where to call or where to start. It's amazing. We get calls from people in Toledo, we get calls from people in Columbus, and we get calls from all over Ohio wondering about the fair housing program in our 3-county area. So our mission is to help educate the public about it and let them know that there is a service we provide to consult with about it. And if necessary, we can consult with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission to find out what's going on. Now, one of the areas of fair housing that is become important lately and most discussed lately is the protected class of mental and physical disability. A lot of the other protected classes could be fairly straight cut. However, the mental and physical disability one is very unique in the sense that it's so diverse. We've learned of some specific cases, and I want to bring up one example that might help drive it home as to why discrimination is occurring on the mental and physical disability level. Okay, we learned of a case in Toledo recently where a landlord had prevented someone with a physical disability of making a reasonable accommodation to their home. The homeowner had to pay for it, but if the landlord did not permit it, they were being accused of discrimination, and they lost that case. So it's a sensitive topic, and it's got a lot of rules and facets, and so mental and physical disability is the one of the most sensitive of the protected classes, and the one that we receive the most calls about. So if anyone's interested in the services we provide, we have a 1-800 number. I have packets I can leave on the table if you'd like to grab one on your way out, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Glenn. And now we've been listening to challenges, so we shift gears or direction a bit. We're going to talk about local solutions. And again, these are from those who've been invited to speak. And so Bill Dunlap, Sammy in the Plains, 317 board.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. I think that mic's not on yet. There we go. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Holden, and I want to thank the group who planned this town hall meeting, Mill Creek. I know Tom Walker was involved in others, and I want to thank you all for making this happen. And I want to thank Mayor Wheel for creating these forums on a regular basis to get feedback from the community. I think it's good for everyone to talk about these issues. So our discussion is to talk about a solution. Back in 1999, the Athens County Metropolitan Housing Authority and the board and other partners applied for a grant for housing for individuals who are homeless, single, with substance abuse and mental illness issues. We received the grant for that, and we created a body of partners through that process that involved us, the Metropolitan Housing Authority, Tri-County Mental Health, Health Recovery Services, Tri-County Community Action. I see Doug Stanley back there, People's Bank, Panic, Knoll and Associates, Green Company Construction, Certified Mechanical, and Terraforms. These were all partners who helped make the physical construction happen. Now, we also had some funding partners. This project began actually in May of 2002. We had the Ohio Department of Mental Health contribute $176,000. Athens Metropolitan Housing contributed $223,800 for a Shelter Plus Care grant. The Federal Home Loan Bank contributed $125,000, and the 317 board created $30,000 with a total project cost of $554,600. So all that came together to make this happen. The process itself, I can't say enough about Keith Andrews and the Athens Metropolitan Housing Authority. Keith was a side-by-side partner all the way through the process, and he sort of led Earl and I, who were new into this kind of a business, through the fog of all the things we had to do, becoming a landlord for people who were in need of housing. So I can't thank Keith enough. I think Keith's here somewhere. But anyway, thank you, Keith. So we also, during that process of construction, that's when we began to work with neighbors. I think you've got to start early in working with your fellow neighbors whenever you're doing a project. And we had neighbors on all sides of our building in very close proximity. And I have some pictures I'll circulate you can see. But what we did, we purchased an existing building, which I think was some trucking company maintenance building, and we converted it to a 5-unit housing unit. And we began talking to the neighbors, and then they began talking to us during the construction process. They actually became watchdogs. If someone was seen there in the evenings during the end of the construction day, they were calling us and telling us, hey, we think someone's going to steal some of your copper or something out of there. So in working back and forth with the neighbors, I think it has helped us bond better with the folks in the neighborhood. We not only had residential neighbors, we also had a union hall on one side of the building, and we actually had the tenants in the building complaining about the union hall. Because the issue was when they'd have their meetings over there, they would have cars parked everywhere all over the place, and we had some parking units there for the tenants at the housing unit, and they didn't have a place to park. So we always hear of the NIMBY issues in neighborhoods when there are projects coming in, but you don't always get the pushback the other way. So that was interesting to us. And I think the one neighbor we had, she really did keep an eye on things for us. She was sort of the mother of the housing complex for us, because she let us know if she thought something was happening that shouldn't be happening. And so I think we worked out a very good relationship that way. As a matter of fact, it was such a good relationship. When she decided to move, she called us and asked us if we wanted to buy her property. So obviously, I don't think Earl wants to be another landlord for any more property. But anyway, that was. But I think that's important. The biggest issues I think we had initially around the any kind of concern. Initially, there may have been a letter or two to the editor regarding concerns about drug dealing or alcohol. Not much on the mental health side. And so as we started out, we got people in the unit, but I think through the years, we've been at it for 10 years now, we may have made some mistakes in getting the right fit early on. Because there were some folks who didn't work out, and since the housing is tied to treatment, they have an occupancy agreement, and if they are not in compliance with treatment, they can lose their housing. So we did have to remove some folks, but overall, in the long run, we've served a total of 23 people over the 10 years. We currently have all of the 5 units occupied now, and we have maintained, our goals for the unit have been to maintain housing, folks to maintain housing for at least 6 months, and we've met that 100%. We've had people to have income and benefits when they leave the facility. We had 100% with that. We had one person leave the facility. We've stabilized the tenants to where they've had an average length of stay of about 3 years. So our goal was to keep people in the units 1 to 3 years, stabilize, and then move on to other housing. And I think we've been able to do that. And it's a big job to take on a housing project, and how Keith Anderson does that every day of his life, I don't know. But it's very, very rewarding to see people get that opportunity. We just put a new person in the unit last night who had been homeless and has not had anywhere to stay for a long time, and he was very grateful and has promised to be a model tenant for us from here on out. We hear that a lot too. So, but also I want to say Earl Cecil, the director of the 317 board, has had a vision to do all we can in this community to help those in need, and he's been a great leader on that. We have Diane Foff, who's our community services manager, and she's heavily involved in all kinds of housing projects, and I think she's made a big difference in creating new opportunities and providing additional solutions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Our next speaker is Linda Roback, whose title is Neighbor. Here comes the mic.
Hello, my name is Lisa Roback, and I live in the Plains, and I'm a neighbor of the Sammy housing that Bill Dunlap was talking about. But more than that, tonight I feel that I can relate to all sides of this issue. Before I became a special education teacher, I worked at the Gathering Place, a community mental health center, for 13 years. 12 of those years I was the executive director. And so based on my experience, I do know that the needs for housing for consumers of mental health services are very real. It became a huge part of my job, and it is just amazingly difficult to find good, adequate housing for consumers. But housing came to my backyard, and so I had to really struggle with how I felt about that. Because of my mental health background, I became the spokesperson for my neighborhood. All of the concerns, all of the rumors, everything, we had regular meetings in the neighborhood. So I did call Earl Cecil and Bill Dunlap and ask for a meeting. And because I was an insider in the mental health system, in addition to being a neighbor and a relatively new mom at that point, I asked really difficult questions because I knew what to ask. And I did ask extremely difficult questions. And to my relief, they had done some really comprehensive planning, I thought, down to the point of, like Mr. Dunlap said, there needed to be some tweaking. They were prepared for the tweaking that needed to take place. And to my comfort, I felt that they had definitely thought about all the services that needed to be in place. And of course, I knew working with mental health consumers that it can be very difficult, especially if people become non-compliant because of issues, particularly around substance abuse. So I guess I felt my comfort level and the knowledge that I came back with, I felt comfortable, and I was able to kind of give that information to our neighborhood. And then, of course, the residents moved in. It was not issue-free, I will say, at the very beginning. There was only one major incident that the neighborhood was aware of. And, the police came, and I called the 317 board again as the unofficial chair in our community, and met with them again. And, they did talk about, without, of course, violating confidentiality, they did talk about the issues with me, and again, what their plan was. I will tell you that it has been 10 years, which is unbelievable, because in this time, it's just become a fact of life. We don't know all the neighbors. We have gotten to know a couple of the neighbors really well. One gentleman in particular borrows tools from us and, is friendly. And since we both work during the day, he kind of keeps an eye on things. One other resident or neighbor in the apartments has been very helpful to my next door neighbor, who is elderly and has had some health concerns. He's been helpful with them. I guess, it's been a fairly smooth transition. My issues, our issues as neighbors were addressed, and I would say that it's been a wonderful wonderful place for the residents to live. As I said, the need is extremely, extremely significant. One of the things that Andrea mentioned is transportation. Not all of the residents have cars, so it's nice to be on the bus path. It's nice to have walking distance to stores and to area community, in the Plains. There's lots of things that they need that they can get there. So I guess I don't have much anything else to say other than it has worked out to the benefit of everybody.
Thank you, Lisa. Let me just note our first 4 speakers were describing challenges, and the last 2 local solutions. And I say that because our next speaker is Andrea Horsch, who you've met this evening, and she's with Good Works, and she is now talking about the local solution side of the coin.
Thank you. Well, I think that a large part of the local solution is in this room, which is that our community as a whole, to some degree, has a recognition, and to another degree could do better with owning homelessness as an issue that is coming from our community and happening to our community. Homelessness is not a problem that Good Works has created, and Good Works is certainly not able to solve this problem. And we are not serving homeless people as though homeless people were a separate and distinct group from our population at large. We're serving many people who are poor, who become homeless, and who hopefully don't stay homeless. Our staff includes 3 people who work one-on-one with people who move into the Timothy House. One of them is here tonight. Her name is Ann Wilson. Wave, Ann, even though it embarrasses you terribly. Thank you. People like Ann work one-on-one with people who move into the Timothy House. It's Ann's job to sit down with people on the day that they move in, to ask them what they hope to accomplish, and then to come up with a day-to-day plan for how to get from point A to point B. And so much of what that involves is connecting with other agencies, like the programs that have already been described this evening, agencies like Integrated Services and 317 board agencies. But a huge part of the solution locally is to become that supportive community that people are missing. People fall through the cracks because there are big cracks to fall through. We want to plug up some of those gaps. We want to truly be a community of hope for people and not just put it on t-shirts. So we want to really be that, and research shows that the greatest influencing factor in a person who's currently experiencing homelessness becoming stable is having someone help them through it. So that's what we hope to do. We're not just about getting people indoors at night. We want to help people get out of crisis mode and find stability. I mentioned that we serve 9 counties, but 60% of the people who come to the Timothy House are from Athens County. 10% of those people are folks who come through just for a night. And among the remaining 30 or so percent, people who come to us from other counties and stay with us for a little while frequently return to the counties that they came from. And so, for example, if a case manager from Tri-County Mental Health in Logan brings a person to the Timothy House, we find that those case managers do a great job of helping those residents of the Timothy House from Logan stay connected with resources in Logan and move back home to Logan when they are not homeless anymore. We also find that access to resources and opportunities for work is key. Transportation is the biggest single difference between urban poverty and rural poverty. And independence is huge. We don't just connect people with resources that they need, we teach people how to find those resources for themselves. And being able to walk to those resources or to hop on the Athens transit routes is tremendously empowering for people, and also gives people the experience of doing for themselves these things that they're going to need to keep doing for themselves when they're not homeless anymore. So it's important to us that we continue to be within walking distance from mental health, physical health, addiction rehabilitation, housing, and work opportunities, as well as schools. We think that it's a very good thing that kids who live at the Timothy House are within walking distance from an elementary school and a middle school. And we're happy to see that the kids who live at the house are enrolled in school and attending school for the whole time that they're there. So on to what we would like to see happen, or more of what we would like to see happen. First, I want to say thank you to our city planner, Paul Loeb. Paul spent more than his lunch break meeting with me and my coworker Chris, discussing possible solutions regarding our need to expand and our need to be in the city. And Mayor Weil, thank you for following up on our time with Paul. There's a misconception, I think, that the property that GoodWorks owns on Lurig Road is also a site primarily for shelter. I feel like I need to clear up that this is a site where we do a lot of things, but not where we do emergency shelter. We house hundreds of volunteers on this property through the course of a year, and these volunteers do everything from cooking our community meal, Friday Night Life, every Friday, to doing repairs in many people's homes. And in fact, much of the work that we do out of the Lurig Road property is homeless prevention. So it's not our intention or our plan, nor do we think it would be right to drop the things that we're doing on that property to put a Band-Aid on the problem of not having enough space to house people in town. Again, our first choice would be still to purchase the house next door and to expand into that house. But we don't want to gamble on this again. We don't want to put a lot of time and energy into something that is unlikely to be approved or to be approvable. So we really want to work on this. We want to learn more about what would need to happen to make this possible on our end. We want to be attentive and listen to the city and to the community about barriers that are coming up on their end, on your end. We're willing to consider moving to the Timothy House to a different location. And we're also open to considering building. But whatever we do, we need to continue valuing our community partnerships. We want to continue to be able to work very closely with the people who are staying in the house. And we want to be good neighbors. We want to be good neighbors to the people who are permanently our neighbors on Central Avenue, and for the people who move into the Timothy House for the time that they're there. And we want to continue to be good neighbors to people once they've moved out of the Timothy House. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrea. And our next speaker is Robin Brigante. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
And she is from Habitat for Humanity. Robin.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Robin Brigante, and I'm the owner of a Habitat house. And I was diagnosed with my mental illness in 1999. I was working for the government. I had moved here from Columbus, and I lost my job at that time and became homeless. I wound up at Sheltering Arms, and I lived there for a while. I went to college, And while I was in college, I had a car accident while I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 11 months and became paralyzed. And during that time is whenever I started the process for my house for Habitat for Humanity. And if I didn't have that house, my life would be a lot harder than it is. It was built around me and my chair, so I can reach things. I can go in and out of my house without any steps. I can park my van so I can get in. It's accessible for me. It helps with my showers. It makes it where I can live alone. It's great. It's affordable for me. I do have a mortgage, like Kevin said, but it is affordable to my income. They had a little housewarming for me whenever I moved in, and the neighbors came over, and I got to meet them. And my neighbors are great. They help me with mowing my lawn, and when my ramp doesn't come up or down in my van, they come over and help me. And it's a great place to live, and they help me keep up on things. Good Work has come over. The people that stay there come over and help me to finish painting the walls, and they've helped me numerous times to pick up the limbs out of my yard and done all kinds of things to help me keep my place up that I'm unable to physically do. I just can't say enough for what all the community has done to help me. It's just, they're wonderful programs. Excuse me, if I didn't get the help that I did through these programs, I don't know that I would have been able to finish my degree. I'm now a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and my life is just a lot easier than I know that it would be if I didn't have the assistance and the help that I have today. And I'm very blessed and very appreciative. And I'm just here to let everyone know that these programs work. And I'm proof of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Now we're going to go to part 3 of our meeting. The first 2 parts have been challenges, local solutions. And now we're ready for community response. And so let me just sketch out our hopes, which are our plans for the evening. The purpose of this community response is to invite you to express your views on this topic of housing for those in need. And to allow as many points of view to be expressed as possible, please limit your comments to items not already said earlier in the evening. We're talking about what? Listening to each other, not for repetition. So each speaker henceforth, now we're down to the ordinary mortals. You get 3 minutes henceforth. And those a step or 2 above us mortals have already spoken. So we'll hope that we can listen to all perspectives. You'll express your views, and you'll listen to the viewpoints of others. Speakers will be invited up to the mic in the order in which they signed up, and I'm going to continue to do my best to give all of you a productive community experience. And so the next speaker we have is from the Gathering Place, and Mary Kneier. Are you here? I would pronounce it Mary Kneier, but that may or may not be right. Okay.
seems to be a lot of feedback.
Okay.
This one.
Thank you very much. Hello, as Ellsworth said, I'm Mary Knier from The Gathering Place. Lisa, it's nice to finally see you. I've seen your name on mail. So The Gathering Place is a mental health drop-in center. It's not a non-residential facility. It's a peer support recovery center. We're open 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for people with mental illness to come and have relationships, recreational activities, meaningful activities, volunteer opportunities, and they receive support from staff in daily living skills. So my experience, I've been at the Gathering Place for about 6 years, is that, we're located on North Congress Street, on the corner of Congress and Washington, so it's a residential area, a residential street. We have one of the nicest houses. It's a 3-story Victorian home. It's one of the best kept houses on that block. I don't think that anybody could say that their property value in any way has declined because the Gathering Place is there. We have had no trouble since I've been there with any of our neighbors. And I would invite anybody who has questions or concerns about individuals with mental illness to please come and spend some time with us. We accept volunteers of all types. Just give us a call. You can find us in the phone book, and we will get you set up to come, and I guess you can get rid of your fears, because you will be invited and you will experience what people with mental illness are, and that is regular people. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next we have on my list, Athens County Job and Family Services. I don't have a name, and is someone intending to speak? Okay, come right on up. I'll let you give them your name, because Nick next to you I can name, but you I can't, sir.
I'm Jack Freck.
Oh, sorry about that, Jack. I said can't, and that was right. Sorry, I apologize.
I try to keep a low profile. Apparently I've been successful. You know, this is, it's kind of interesting, actually. We're talking about, particularly about public housing, because we never think about, some people provide public housing for all the time. It doesn't seem to bother, which are college students. Dormitories, that's kind of, looking at my former roommate in college back there, Doug Stanley, we were, I think, just the two of us alone back in 68, 69 gave such a bad reputation to residents of public housing that I'm not sure we recovered. But the issue of providing housing for people with special needs, you know, it's a funny thing in this country. We like to think that we help people who are deserving, and that seems to be an issue with us. We kind of divide people into deserving people, people we need help, and then other people like just basic women, children, folks like that, who we don't need to help so much. It's generally, I think, been agreed that people who have disabilities are people who deserve help. And I think that's something that, like elderly people, disabled people, normally when folks, even the most conservative people, rattle off a list of people, you know, that we should be helping, they always say we should be helping people with disabilities. Therefore, we think they're deserving. I don't think anything could be further from the truth about how we really feel about this. I mean, if we're honest, mostly folks who are not able to take care of themselves, we really wish they'd just go away. Folks who are on disability, and this to me is the best example of all. Most of the folks that we run into on disability are getting SSI. How many people know what SSI is? Supplemental Security Income. It's cash assistance for people who are disabled. There's about 2,200 people in Athens County who get SSI. The SSI payment standard is about $678 a month, something like that. The poverty level, though, is actually $930 a month for a single person. We pay people that we know are disabled, that we have determined, in order to get the assistance in the first place, you have to be unable to work, you have to be permanently disabled. Once we've done that, we give you 75% of what we know you need to live on. So that's how we treat people that we think are deserving. So you can only imagine how we treat the undeserving. So we have these folks out there who are living on less than we know what they need to live on. And then we're kind of baffled about why they have housing problems, about why they have transportation problems. Truth of the matter is about why they have problems feeding themselves. This is by design. I mean, this is by design. And I think that the first step we need to take, we have to give people enough money to live on, everybody, to meet their basic needs. If you want to solve the housing problem for people who are disabled, give them enough money that they can pay rent somewhere. That doesn't mean they aren't going to need a lot of other services or a lot of other help, but they need enough money so that they can provide a roof over their head, that they can provide transportation. If we take that position that everyone is deserving of that, our housing problems would be a lot less.
I think I heard Muriel Grimm's pleasant little jingle there. We have the best timekeepers tonight between the North Pole and the South Pole. Muriel Grimm right here. And thank you, Muriel, for taking the time and effort to work with us. Okay, next we will hear from Keith Andrews of the Athens Metropolitan Housing Authority.
Thank you. My name is Keith Andrews. I'm the Executive Director of Athens Metropolitan Housing Authority. I actually began work there in 1980, so I'm getting close to entering my 32 years of service with them. Of those 32 years, the last 12, I've had the pleasure of being the Executive Director of the Housing Authority, and in those 12 years, I can proudly say that I've averaged 80 units of housing new to our programs in that 12-year period. Most recently, we got some elderly vouchers available to us. We got issued 100 of those. We were able to actually put all those on the street, get those leased up in an 11-month period. Top of my waiting list emptied out down to like 257 people. Currently, as of today, I'm back up to 800 and some people on top of that waiting list, although the top 200 on that waiting list are disabled individuals that either mental health, physical, or developmental disability that need our services. We partnership with Integrated Services, Tri-County Community Action, 317 Board, High Department of Mental Health. And there's just it's ongoing the partnerships that we want to do that. And a project we did a number of years ago that hasn't even been talked about tonight was over 430 West Union Street. We purchased a 2-story structure over there. High Department of Mental Health provided us money back for the purchase. What money we used to originally purchase it, we used to rehab it. We put 6 individuals in that structure. And I can only think of, Bill, maybe one incident that's ever really occurred with that structure there. Nobody really knows that there really exists. It was a dilapidated building that was falling down. It's actually a gorgeous structure that provides a lot of beauty to that section of the town as it gets built up on there. In fact, the housing authority's job is to provide decent, safe, affordable housing in Athens County, but we can't be the sole person to do that. It does take the entire community to help us work through that process. Our budget right now and all the programs we run is currently somewhere between $6.5 to $7 million coming into this county in a 12-month period to service everybody that we can. And that's just my response is we can't be the sole service provider for affordable housing in this county because there's just not enough of us or not money flowing into our organization to be able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Our next speaker will be Malina Miller, who is a labeled concerned community member. That's very accurate. Malina, here's the mic.
I'm always concerned. Well, I'm always concerned about something, so I am here tonight as a community member. But it's interesting because I do have a lot of background and connection to those with mental health issues. I used to play at the mental hospital with my band in the 1960s and 70s. And I moved to California for 25 years. And when I came back, those folks didn't live at the mental institution anymore. We used to call it the old mental institution. And I saw many of these folks on the streets of Athens. I didn't know that many of them were homeless after all those years and had been released. I work for visiting nurses, so as you can imagine, we take care of a lot of people. We take care of 1,500 people easily every year for 30 years now. Many of them have mental health issues along with their physical issues. But I'm not here necessarily to represent anybody tonight. I live on 25 Graham Drive, and so you're probably familiar with some of the things that have gone on with our chaotic development on Graham Drive. And I'm not here to accuse or reprimand any one individual or any organization, but I would like to, I really commend you for bringing up the issue of that, you know, it was so important to your suggestion of starting early and contacting the neighborhood and letting all the neighbors know the truth of what's going on. I don't care if it's a development that may house homeless or those with mental health issues, but if neighbors do not know what's going on, I mean, you know, we were used to having a single dwelling house at the bottom of our street for many, many years, and suddenly one day it was gone, and everybody up and down the street asked what was going on. And ultimately, the short and long of it is, you know, the media just blasted people up and down Graham Drive and the rest of the Far East neighborhood for, number one, we didn't have any information. We were supposed to get this information from the newspaper. Lots of people don't subscribe to the newspaper. Or we're supposed to get it online on the city website. You know, there are many elderly people in my neighborhood who don't have a computer. And I, for one, do not have time to look at the city website. You can imagine I'm pretty busy. So I did like Mayor Wild's suggestion. He came from another community and saw some signs about development that had been pounded into the ground. I'm not suggesting that we say what kind of people will be living in these developments. And that wasn't the issue. That was never the issue. We were never concerned about who is going to be living at the end of our street, because we have 8 to 10, at least, people that I can think of up and down Graham Drive who are teachers, social workers, physicians, and so forth. I think it's really very interesting and important, though, that we've got to have better communication. I'm going to really wrap this up, Ellsworth, I promise you I am. So I'm going to quote a neighbor of mine who says, I would urge you to insist that city officials follow an open and transparent process as they develop new laws, adhere to time-tested principles of zoning and city planning, and all laws that are impartial, uniform, and consistent. And that's what we need. And, you know, then I think you will, because otherwise you ostracize this group further, and that's not what we want in our communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonham. Okay, now we move to those of you who signed up to speak this evening, and the first name on the list, the head of the line, is Bruce Hergood. Bruce, the floor is yours.
Jack mentioned that the criterion that they use for providing help and assistance is, are the persons deserving? That sounds to me like a Calvinistic notion, not a Judeo-Christian notion. The Judeo-Christian notion would be trying to seek out a good life for everyone, to do justly, to love mercy. Jack, I hope that maybe you can rethink that deserving as opposed to providing a good life. It's the basis for social democrats and social liberals. Terry mentioned that they opened a house for mentally ill persons in Yellow Springs a number of years ago. And the idea was that Yellow Springs is the kind of place where you might not notice that there was a house especially dedicated to that, because people in Fairborn, and especially at Wright Patterson, think that everybody in Yellow Springs is in mental illness. I lived in Yellow Springs for 10 years, and I know that's not true. But I began thinking, what's the difference between Yellow Springs, which is a college town, and Athens, which is a college town? And somebody mentioned that the largest public housing issue is OU. And nobody's talked about OU tonight. And why? Well, you can answer that yourselves. But maybe we should have our commission, our Disabilities Commission, of which Robin is a member, and I'm a member, and others here are members. Maybe we should discuss public housing with OU, because they are taking up so much of our time that we don't have time to talk and sit like this regularly to talk about local issues. The local issue of burning couches and milling around downtown 20 nights out of 30 a year so that they can drink and call the fire department, that's not what we came to Athens for. And that's not a local issue, it's an OU issue. And we should deal with that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
I didn't understand that.
Next speaker is Barry Thomas. Barry? I don't see him. He was just back from Florida. Maybe he's returned. Okay. Let's see. Michael Keys. Here you are, Michael.
Thank you. I want to kind of direct this to Andrea. I'm very interested in the situation with Good Works, excuse me, and what did happen and what didn't happen with the house next door. You mentioned that instead of trying to do a lot of homework and set things up and then come to the city and ask, that the better way, the better strategy would be to plan in advance and work in advance and work together. Has anything happened with that, or is that progressing in any way, or what's happening?
Can I answer now? Is that okay?
Okay. This is part of these 3 minutes, so do it
Okay.
justice.
I'm really sorry that I can't talk fast. I'm from the sticks. Yes, Mike, thank you very much for asking. Paul Logue has committed to talking with us about ways that we can plan with better assurance for requesting permission to expand, or to find places in town where we could legally currently relocate under our current coding. My coworker Chris and I are also researching alternative codes for the Timothy House, because as I said before, we're coded as a boarding house. We're actually not a boarding house, we're an agency providing emergency shelters. So this is something that we are working on and continuing to research. And we're also very, very open to considering other properties.
Thank you. Okay, Greg Broadhurst, you're next.
Greg Broadhurst, I'm a service-connected disabled Vietnam veteran. I lived on 2nd Street on Granville Avenue since 1981. And I'm speaking to the externalities that are caused by people who don't live in the neighborhood and in trying to solve problems that are not of our origin. And it may seem like really, whoa, not of our origin. Well, I'd be a little more comfortable if I knew that all the people being served were from around here, you know. And that's a concern that I have. And eventually I'll talk with people, around about that, because they've helped me out over time at different times, but there's other issues that keep coming up and have to do with going back to the same old solution and trying to run that through again. Well, it ain't gonna work, because a number of people, myself included, back in the early 80s, got the zoning changed in the west side on purpose so that we wouldn't have the densification that is caused by having a multifamily situation in the neighborhood. So actually gave rise to the reincarnation of the West Side Community Association, formerly West Side Neighborhood Association. So I just say that we need to go back to the table and not try to play with things that people worked really hard for to change in the past. And you know, I love getting up in the morning and hearing those kids playing up and down the street that weren't there 20, 30 years ago. You know, and that's not that doesn't include other people, but when you're talking about over-densifying the neighborhood that's already committed to sheltering arms, you're talking about, you know, the apartment complex on West State Street. You know, I think there just needs to be a new look at how people's needs, everybody's needs, are being addressed, and having respect for the efforts that people have made to restructure and rebuild neighborhoods so that it can have a viable neighborhood that people are actually moving from out of state to. We've got 2 new neighbors that moved to the West Side neighborhood because of those things that the neighborhood has available to families. And over-densifying is not a solution. So I think we need to find some other way to resolve the situation, especially in regards to the Good Works situation. Thanks.
That's great.
Thank you, Greg. Next on the list is Celia Joyce. Celia?
Alright, maybe this will work. I don't know. Hi everyone, I'm Celia Joyce, college student, guilty, sorry. I'm also a social work intern at the Gathering Place. I also live by a low-income apartment complex where many people with mental illnesses reside. And I have to say they are great neighbors. The wild college students next door to me, well, that's a different story. But low-income housing for those coping with mental illness is located conveniently close uptown, where many valuable social services, free lunches, Bible studies, and recovery groups are located. These are highly beneficial resources. And just restating that some people with a mental illness due to limited income, cannot afford a vehicle, so having housing located close up to town is essential. Thank you. This housing proposal is not only convenient due to its location, but also the fact that it will include families to add support. Uptown homes usually consist of an individual coping with a mental illness, gaining support from various uptown agencies, like the Gathering Place. This new structure will house families, creating a support group within the home. If we do not add or think about these additions, the cycle will continue and people will not get better. They will flood the Timothy House or be put out on the streets. And again, when the system gives up on these people, how are they not supposed to give up on themselves? This is when the crime will occur. When the people need to steal or sell drugs to gain money out of anger, and then in turn try and provide housing for themselves uptown or close to, which I personally know how expensive that can be. So I'm just asking everybody today to think about it. Let me ask you, how many people of us know somebody with a mental illness? And I bet many of us have neighbors already with a mental illness and don't even know it. It's not a question that we typically ask our neighbors. So I'm asking you to think about, how is this different than the housing proposal at stake? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Celia. Next, we have Lowell Jacobs. Lowell?
He had to leave. He has comments that I gave you.
Oh, okay, you wanted them at this point. I I got the impression he was here. Okay. Well, he sent a letter, and I thought that he had arrived, so I'll just read through this letter. I would like to thank Good Works for their contribution to our community. We all share the goal of helping those in need on the road to re-entering sustained society and out of subsidized housing. For success in re-entering functional society, there must be easy access to appropriate employment. There is a distinct lack of employment on the west side. Easy access to appropriate employment opportunities exists by the mall on the far east side. There, people with minimal experience in achieving and maintaining employment will have multiple opportunities with no complicated transportation issues. Surely there are buses from the far west side, but this costs money and complicates access to work. Two challenges that do not contribute to the odds of success. There are vastly more employment opportunities and the ability to improve the level of employment over time. Some with minimal experience in holding jobs may need access to the sheer number of viable opportunities available. Also available is considerably more access to food. There are numerous grocery and pantry commodities. Nutrition is clearly a necessity for societal functionality. In conclusion, I would like to add, we are actively pushing for owner-occupied families on the west side. This is the direction that I will encourage. And then a discussion of concentration. The concentration of subsidized housing in a small neighborhood has never worked in the favor of a community. Concentrating subsidized housing next to an elementary school is also not really a good idea. Concentrating subsidized housing does not work in favor of the value of the homes owned by residents in the community. And that's written by Lowell Jacobs. Okay, the next name I have, I'm not sure I can quite read it, but Richard Dale, is it Otto, Richard Dale, and you can supply the proper last name when you get here, and my apologies. The floor is yours.
You got the name right, Richard Dale Otto.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm what you call the Walkman, apparently. An article a while back in the Messenger had me as the Walkman on Columbus Road, and as you probably know, Charlie Hawk had passed, and I was staying out there, basically being the guardian of his collecting of stuff, which I didn't mind because I had a chance to write and work on a lot of songs and work on ideas. And now that he is dead, I find myself in a strange position of being homeless after 14 years of being out at his place, off and on. And so I'm staying at the local shelter after staying at some friends' places. And as you can imagine, being 50 years old and having to all of a sudden stay at friends' places or a shelter is not the easiest thing. And I think if I went back to Strongsville, North Royalton, Parma, where I'm from, it would be even harder. So I wanted to say thank you to the community for having a support network that allows people where I didn't see it coming because the guy was pretty spry last time I saw Charlie Hawk. He was doing all kinds of things down there at his place, so I didn't see that coming at all. And if you can be of any help, I'm still looking for a place and still writing songs and still working on books and the college, the alumni guy working on this thing, So I just want to say again, thank you to the community.
Please thank the community.
Thank you, Richard Dale Otto. Our next speaker is David Hartinger. David?
Hi everyone, I want to say I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak. I've been homeless before, but this community's brought me a lot of good things, and I want to give back to the community. I think 10, 12 years ago I had a dream to move back to Athens, and I did. 6 years ago I had a dream to move back to Athens, and I did. So I'm here to stay. Athens is a beautiful community with a lot of college people. I like to say housing should be affordable in our community, and that we need to help one another like Athens always does. And I like to see an end to the stigma too on mental illness. And there's a lot of people that don't understand it, but education is a way. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone in this community.
Thank you, David. Next, I'll call upon Matt Moore. Matt?
There we go. Hey everybody, let me know if I'm doing this thing right. I don't like these things. Yeah, I'm Matt Moore. I just graduated from OU in June and was lucky enough to do an internship right after graduating at Good Works and caught the love bug, so I like people now. I want to encourage everyone here to sort of kind of close your eyes and imagine with me. Tonight, if you guys get in your cars and you go home and you pull up into your drive and there's nothing there, you know, it burned down or your house just disappeared, what would you do? Myself, I would call my parents, my family, my folks back in Belmont County, and then friends if they weren't there. But for some folks, they don't have those social assets. They don't have family or friends that they can lean on, and their last resort is going to strangers. And it's an incredibly brave thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do. But we have some experts on poverty and on homelessness, and especially generational problems like these in Athens County and southeastern Ohio. And Mr. Weil, I voted for you and some other great people that I'm glad I voted for, and because I really believe and I hope in our elected officials that they can foster effective change for welfare and for a community and for safety and for opportunity and hope. And if folks, 150 folks, 60 children, go to that one place they've heard of as a community with hope, and they are turned away there, their last resort, where they don't even know anyone, it's a pretty sad thing. So I would really encourage everyone here to trust the experts of poverty here in our community. We've all got wants for certain things in our neighborhoods, but the wants and needs thing is very different. So needs first and then wants. I would ask you all for that. So let's listen to our experts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. Now I'd like to call on Ralph Bowl. Ralph? We're not going to adjourn immediately, so yes and no.
All right. First of all, let me say I'm Ralph Bolt. I've been in the community for about 40 years. Actually been working in public service for 37 of that as a paramedic. As a matter of fact, somebody's complaining about working too much. I've already put in 72 hours this week, and I got another 32 to put in before the week's out. So some of us do work a lot. It's nice to have more than one job. To these folks that are sitting behind me, I say we're blessed. You know, a lot of times you want to say bless you people, but you know, we're the ones that's blessed by their presence, I think. And I appreciate them a lot. Now, you ever stand up in front of a crowd and throw yourself in the frying pan? That's what I'm about to do. I've done this a couple of times, it's kind of scary. But why I came here and what I stepped in here to do is to say, about 2 months ago, I started working on the idea that I would like to open a homeless shelter. And I throw myself out there saying, I can use any help I can get. I have a large building in Nelsonville that has 7 bedrooms. It is already zoned for R3. It is already in a situation where we are working at the idea. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. We're just working at the idea. And yes, we've already had neighbors come to me and say, we're going to stop you if you try. But we're understanding of that, okay? Lack of information. It's there. I'm not throwing myself out there to say I want to be a part of Good Works. Good Works is one of the most incredible groups that we've ever had developed here in Athens, and I'm proud of them. I personally haven't worked with them any, but I know that's probably going to change. On the other hand, we're looking to actually create an independent homeless shelter from the Good Works, but if the connection happens, God bless. My point is that there's more than just the Athens City. The Athens City has some issues and some problems. God knows we have homeless not just there, but throughout Athens County, throughout this region. And there are some other resources, and I'm hoping to become one of those resources. You know, I have the place, I have the land, I have the property, and I think we can make something of it. I'm just kind of throwing myself out there and saying, I'm here, I want to do this, give me some help. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. That's the end of the speakers whom I have, names I've been given. I have 2 letters I would like to read to you. And then also, we're supposed to be finished at 8:30, and it looks as though we'll have a few minutes if some of you would like to speak. So I'll mention that now, and let me read these letters. The first of them is pretty long, and so I'm going to summarize till I get to the concluding paragraph, and I think that'll capture the essence of it. It's from Jeff Dill, 31 Graham Drive, and so this is my brief, succinct summary. Thank you for the invitation to speak. The 10 Graham Drive project was illegally approved in direct violation of numerous provisions of the Athens zoning code. Then jumping ahead, we filed a timely appeal. The city and the developer chose to ignore the appeal and proceed with construction. And jumping ahead, the 10 Graham Drive project is a deliberate attempt to circumvent both the spirit and the letter of the zoning code through arbitrary, capricious, and selective enforcement. And jumping ahead, a predictable consequence of the illegal Graham Drive decision is the chaos that has ensued over other planned developments. The recent Bellavino controversy of Stimson Avenue is a case in point. A second example occurred at the February 14th, 2012 meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals, when the landlord of a property on Richland Avenue was instructed by the zoning board to evict a grandmother, her daughter, and her infant granddaughter. And so I won't go ahead with the reason, etc. So here are the 2 concluding paragraphs. At its core, the city's unquestioning support of the 10 Graham Drive project contradicts other recent decisions and clearly exemplifies their belief that the end justifies the means. We disagree. It most certainly does not. As you pursue your worthy goal of housing people in need, I would urge you to insist that city officials follow an open and transparent process as they develop new laws, that they adhere to well-established and time-tested principles of zoning and city planning, and that they enforce all laws impartially, uniformly, and consistently. Please do not fall into the trap of believing that the end justifies the means. Respectfully, Jeff Dill, 31 Graham. And then I have another letter, but I gotta move things around to get to it. Too loud? Okay. I want to make sure you can hear it. So I can't tell what it sounds like. Thank you for the feedback. Okay, this is from Barry Dillon. Way back. Can you? Okay, I'm just a basic user, and okay, is this about right?
Yes.
I apologize for abusing you, but thank you for having guts enough to cool me in a little bit. Okay, this letter is from Barry Dillon. I am aware that housing accessibility is difficult for many people with disabilities. I was active in establishing the City Commission on Disabilities, and one of the first topics of business I had hoped would be addressed was accessible housing. At the time, I was thinking more about structural accessibility, and that subject still has not been addressed as far as I know. I had hoped and still do that the city would create legislation requiring universal design for all new public and private construction, as well as for major renovations. I know that Pima County, Arizona passed this legislation several years ago, so it can be done. And that's from Barry Dilley. Okay, so those two letters go into our record here. Would anybody else like to speak? Okay, I see. Yes, right on up, please. I think I will have to invite you to give everybody your name because I'm not sure enough to toss it out. For sure.
My name is Sue Riggy, and I have a comment and a question. The comment was, and not directed towards the west side per se, but just in terms of, creative thinking, that if transportation is an issue, it seems like if it's in the interest of our community, that people who meet certain requirements, if they're on benefits through Job and Family Services, if they're homeless, that they get free bus passes. I mean, there's ways of dealing with things like that. But I really mainly had a question, I guess mainly for the fair housing person. There was, felons were not on the list. And I know living on Grand Drive that one of the real concerns that the community had, even though, or people in the neighborhood had, even though in the newspaper it was presented, there's a bunch of bigots over there who don't want homeless moms and babies on their street. What we had heard through the rumor mill, because we weren't, there wasn't this upfront process before things got underway, of having the community come together and talk about it. We didn't know, are we going to have felons on our street? Are we going to have sex abusers on our street? We didn't know. So I also work at Hocking Correctional Facility. And, I often think, well, these guys are the same as the guys on the outside. It's just that one day they're in and one day they're out. Or one day they're out and then one day they're in. And, to decrease recidivism out, obviously it's also helpful to have stable housing and to have a job and all that. Where do felons fall in this whole picture? Are they protected in any way? You mentioned that you can't have sex offenders that good works. Is this just another big population that is unserved?
You mean ex-felons?
Yeah, well, I don't know that politically, ex-cons, felons can't vote. This stuff follows you for a long time.
Yeah.
So if anybody has an answer to that, I'd like to hear.
If someone would choose to respond to that, the floor is his or hers. And not seeing, okay, here we go.
I can't get public assistance.
The housing authorities will manage the property at Grand Drive Family Housing. That's our job. We partnered with ISS to take that job on. Can't say whether there will or won't be felons that will be living there. What I'm going to tell you are there's going to be disabled people who have mental disabilities or some form of a disability. That's required. They got to be homeless or disabled in that community. The difference between what we're doing in this community and addressing that is we're taking housing and we're wrapping that with services around these individuals to help them get through their lives. There's probably going to be episodes where it doesn't house and wrapped in with services. We've been extremely successful at doing that. Bill indicated that in some of the projects that we've done there. We've had 3 and 4 years of stability of people living there. We're not stop dumping this into the community and letting the community deal with it. If issues arise, we will deal with those issues. We've built policies, we've planned way ahead for any instances that may occur. But again, the Housing Authority, Integrated Services, the 317 Board, Hyde Park Mental Health, anybody ever guarantee that something's not going to happen there? No, we can't. Neither can anybody in the community ever guarantee that in your community something's never going to happen. Things happen. That's just a way of life. What we work for doing is wrapping services and providing housing to stabilize that. If we can stabilize that, we can change that. So it brings me to, in 1990, Congress enacted the Landmark American Disabilities Act. And the reason they did that was to provide a clear comprehensive national mandate to elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities. Title II of that act affects public entities such as us, the city of Athens, any governmental office. We have to make changes in our policies, our procedures to accommodate people with disabilities. And some of these things that we do as we're learning as we go, we gain that wisdom. And one of those is we found out how much more successful we can be if the Housing Authority does the housing stuff. That's our job. We rent units, we deal with violations in the housing, Integrated Services, the 317 Board of Hyde Park Mental Health. Their expertise is in the service side. And what we've discovered is by joining our forces, they have the ability to concentrate on the services because they don't have to worry about housing because the Housing Authority is dealing with that issue for them. And we found dealing with the housing and having somebody that can do the service side of it lets us do our job and concentrating solely on the issues of the housing. So, we will do our best. We don't want disruptions in the community. We don't want problems in the community. We hope people call us if there are issues, and we'll take those issues on as they come, one at a time.
Thank you very much. Well, I don't see too many people jumping up and down, and we've all spent pretty close to 2 hours. I want to thank all of the speakers who have been invited and spoken this evening. I want to thank all the rest of you, and I want to thank Milt Greek, and who put a lot of effort into this, and Tom Walker called me on the phone a couple months ago and said, will you come down and participate? And I said I would surely love to. There are probably a lot of other people involved, but I'll mention those two in particular. So thank you very much for coming and being a part of this, where we have taken a substantial community challenge, and we have spent the evening talking about it, and done so in a very appropriate manner. I hope this moves us toward resolution. Thank you very much, and we're adjourned.